News Bulletin, KTN Prime. It's Friday, the 10th of August, 2012. My name is Betty Callow.
And I'm Joy Dorinbira. Tonight in the bulletin, we have some good news for you, of course, with David Rudisha breaking the world record yet again. But well, we'll start by looking at the highlights of tonight's bulletin.
Military begins evacuating victims as 13 Kenyans die in Tanzania road accident.
Scare in Mombasa as a patient exhibits Ebola virus symptoms.
Lack of evidence cripples trial of post-election violence rape suspects.
And Rudisha's record-breaking win unites Kenyans in celebrations. Good evening and welcome to this edition of KTN Prime. And we kick off our bulletin with not a so good note. The military has started evacuating about 50 Kenyans involved in a grisly road accident in the Tanzanian port city of Tanga. The morning accident claimed about 13 lives of members of the PCEA church in Thika who were heading to Dar es Salaam for a church meeting. Now, President Mwai Kibaki has directed the military and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to bring back the injured Kenyans for specialized treatment in Nairobi. Sophia Winuna kicks off tonight's bulletin with that story.
Some were overcome by grief as family, friends and worshippers of the Happy Valley PCEA Church in Thika woke up to shocking news Friday morning. Following a tragic accident in Tanzania that claimed the lives of 13 members of the church.
They gathered here in PCA Happy Valley Church yesterday, Thursday, at 8 in the morning. After short prayers, they left with the two buses. And this morning, the media, we understood that our sisters, our mothers, our wives, some of them perished, others are injured.
It was while en route to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania for a church mission that one of the two buses carrying the group skidded off the road and overturned due to slippery roads. Occupants of the other bus then stopped in an attempt to rescue their fellow worshippers. Eyewitnesses say a speeding lorry then rammed into the stationary bus, leading to the deaths.
Tulikuwa tunaelekea Dar es Salaam kwa mission ya kanisa. Mimi nilikuwa basi ya kwanza. Sasa nikaweza kutoka na nilikuwa na tochi nikasimama kwa barabara sasa nikasimamisha maroli. Ilikuja kuokoa naye.
The accident occurred in Tanga province, 50 kilometers from Dar es Salaam at Madele Bridge near Makole. The casualties and the injured were taken to Itubi Hospital in the area. This is the PCA Happy Valley Church in Thika, where the Women's Guild group that was involved in an accident in Tanzania attended church. And it's currently going on inside and has been happening for the past few hours of this morning, is small groups of people of this church coming in to say prayers for those undergoing treatment and, of course, for the families of the deceased. Kiganja Road Councillor Marubu Mwangi's attempts to get in touch with his wife, who was part of the team involved in the accident, were futile.
Is one of them. Ako kwa hiyo basi na tujaweza, nimempigia mara nyingi na tujaweza kuwasiliana naye. Simu yake inaingia lakini hatujawasiliana naye paka sasa.
President Mwai Kibaki directed the armed forces to provide the necessary aircraft and helicopters to evacuate the injured to Kenyatta National Hospital for further medical attention. Grief-stricken Mary Maina, a member of the Women's Guild, failed to travel with the group due to a family function.
Ni wakati mgumu kuruse your friends, marafiki, na mumekaa nao sana kwa kanisa. Mumefanya kazi ya Mungu nao, na sasa sijui.
11 died on the spot while 2 others succumbed to injuries later. The deceased were among a group of 84 women from the Women's Guild in the Happy Valley Parish, comprising of 6 congregations in the region. Sophia Wanuna, KTN Prime.
A devastating story there. But moving on, panic gripped Mombasa after a man suspected to exhibit symptoms of the deadly Ebola virus was admitted to the Aga Khan hospital. Now the patient, a truck driver, is reported to have arrived into the country this week from Uganda with high fever and flu. 3 other people, including the doctor who attended to him, have been put under quarantine awaiting results of his blood samples, which have been sent to Kemri for tests. Now medical officers were put on high alert, although they ruled out chances of the man suffering from Ebola, which has claimed lives in Uganda.
Friday afternoon at the Aga Khan Hospital in Mombasa, the outpatient wing is on lockdown. Early morning, doctors reported to have received a patient exhibiting symptoms associated with the deadly and highly infectious Ebola virus first reported in western Uganda a few weeks back. And with the patient himself having just returned from Uganda, doctors here were not taking chances, immediately putting him under quarantine. Hospital officials, though refusing to comment on the issue, confirmed that the patient's blood samples have since been taken to the Kenya Medical Research Institute for tests. Dr. Willie Sahwale, head of the Department of Disease Prevention and Control, confirmed receiving the alert, saying investigations will commence as soon as the samples reach Kemri, emphasizing that the case is being treated as a severe flu. And though nobody has succumbed to the deadly virus in Kenya, it is one in a string of cases still being investigated by Kemri, the government appearing keen to minimize panic. So far, 16 people have died from the deadly virus in Uganda. Ebola is a viral hemorrhagic fever with no known treatment or vaccine and is transmitted through close personal contact. Its initial symptoms include persistent fever, intense weakness, muscle pain, headache and sore throat, which is usually followed by vomiting, diarrhea, rashes on the body as well as external bleeding. Though not confirmed, it is the first of such a case to be reported in this region of the country, with 4 people already in isolation, including those who handled the patient. Esther Kahumbi, KTN Prime, Mombasa.
And we are all on the lookout for that. We'll keep you up to date on any of the updates that will be coming in from Mombasa on the confirmation of Ebola there. Now, the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions has admitted it is facing serious challenges in prosecuting rape and other sexual atrocities that were committed during the 2007 post-election violence. Some of the difficulties identified by the prosecution include late reportage of cases, lack of medical records, and identification of the perpetrators, especially where security officers stand accused. Patrick Amimo has the details.
A multi-agency task force dealing with post-election violence has scrutinized about 200 complaints touching on sexual atrocities across the country. But getting concrete evidence on rape has not been easy.
Most of the files that we have, people reported 1 year down the line when there was constituted a commission between the ODPP and the police service.
Some of the prosecution's nightmare arise from the fact that most rape victims identified their aggressors based on presumed ethnicity. Some victims of rape blame police of being reluctant to investigate and prosecute some of the officers accused of sexual violence during the chaos. Most complaints on sexual assaults committed by the police were reported in Nairobi. But again, parades to identify offenders are another stumbling block.
You can imagine the difficulty of bringing 1,000 policemen wearing red berets and jungle uniform and asking somebody to identify. That identification would be challenged. And the fact that they cannot identify the aggressors actually does not mean that they were not raped. You could be raped, but you cannot identify the person who raped you. We find that the medical reports are becoming a challenge because they cannot be found.
Odor says her team discovered investigations of sexual crime during the orgy of violence were flawed, since they leaned heavily on technicalities and strictures of law.
These are incidents that occurred during mass atrocities, and when we started investigating them and the files were compiled, they were being looked at as if they were specific offences, and we were strictly applying the elements of those offences in the Sexual Offences Act, in the Penal Code, using the high level of standard of proof as in the Criminal Procedure Code and the Evidence Act. But that not ought to have been so.
Cases of looting, destruction of property and arson occurred during the mayhem. But eyewitnesses have not come out to testify in some of the cases to facilitate prosecution.
In Eldoret, where we had a lot of arson, housebreaking, these people were reporting after 2 or 3 months when they were in the camps. So policemen did not have an opportunity actually to go to the site and confirm the damages. And in most cases, they were not at the scene.
Once the report is in, and if there is evidence for prosecution, you can rest assured that prosecutions will issue.
The prosecution says all is not lost. It has engaged other criminal justice agencies to review all the cases to ensure that victims of the post-election violence get justice. For KTN, I am Patrick Amimo.